Yeah, one of the things that I'll just kind of reiterate, and some of the other things we talked about already, was just one of the analysts asked Amy Weaver, the CFO, wow, it looks like 250 to 300 basis points of core margin expansion for fiscal 20 going into fiscal 23. So they upped the guidance, and they said, what's the you get a new CFO and all of a sudden the margins improve. What's your secret sauce? And so basically she talked about a number of different things that Clay kind of mentioned, but the revenue expansion during the coronavirus, when we talk about digital transformation, all that kind of stuff, they saw a significant increase. And rather than just, hoping that they'd try and capture it, they invested into it and invested in more sales teams and more marketing teams to go after that demand. And they said it's really, really paid off for them. So Clay, you had Brett Stephen Taylor's interview. What was your favorite highlight there?
Yeah, there were a lot of questions just in general about the operating margin, the leverage, and the revenue. One of the things that stood out to me was a question about, where's the next level of growth come and whatnot. And they specifically talked about the international opportunity. They don't want to just be a US company, with satellite offices across the world. They want to be an international company that, trailblazes, and whether it's a developed country, an emerging market, whatever it is. And they said they have about 30, I think one of the slides you showed earlier, they had 36% of their annual recurring revenue, or ARR, coming from international countries. Yet they still said that the international opportunity to acquire new customers, land and expand, or just upsell on some existing customers is one of their greatest opportunities still. So it'll be very interesting to see how that international percentage of ARR, which again is around 36%, kind of grows. And if it does, maybe get to 40 or even higher in the next 5-10 years, whatever it is, because, I feel like Salesforce is ingrained in the majority probably of enterprises in the US. And, I don't see why that would be different internationally in some developed and emerging markets as well.
All righty. I had the section where they had Stuart Butterfield, the CEO of Slack, as well as their sort of chief, their chief product officer, Slack's chief product officer, and a couple pieces here I thought were really cool. They talked about the digital headquarters in the beginning, and really how there's been a tremendous amount of work that's gone into designing physical headquarter buildings with lighting and places where people meet and all that kind of stuff, and that all sort of blew up during the coronavirus. So Stuart Butterfield said he was going to spend a significantly more time focused on what that digital headquarters looks like. And there's two key tools, I think, that make that really helpful. One is the Slack Connect piece, where you can connect outside your four walls, and certainly great for a customer service kind of organization. As well as Slack Huddle, which is something I've seen in our new Slack, and I almost ended up using it the other day, and I'll certainly report back if we do. But if you're on like a group chat and everybody seems to be online and chatting at the same time, which happens sometimes, you can hit this Huddle button, and then people who opt in can be basically on a voice conference call, and you can still continue to type in the direct message group as well. So it kind of is that meeting in the hallway that just sort of happenstance. It's the virtual equivalent of that. So there's going to be more tools like that are coming. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was Tamar talked a lot about Slack is a platform. You have to remember, it's not just a communication and messaging tool. Slack, the biggest customers that use Slack have hundreds of integrations where they've integrated Slack into their day-to-day business, their business processes, their software tools, enterprise software tools. And they had some statistics that talked about, here we are. We've disclosed this before. 98.8% of our $100,000 plus customers are users of custom integrations, and the average is over 100 per customer. But for the 1 million plus customers, Slack's largest customers, it's 100% uptake, and the average is over 500 custom integrations. So if you think about Slack now being part of this massive Salesforce engine with the number of different verticals that it has and the amped up integrations that can happen and make Slack and /Salesforce even more integrated into the organization, I can sort of see why Salesforce was so excited about Slack. All righty, Deidre, you had the next section.
I did have the next section. I also wanted to key in on something that Clay had said earlier, which was one of the quotes from Mark Benioff at the end about the digital headquarters being more important than the physical headquarters and the virtual spaces being more important. Because I think that connects with what you were just talking about, this idea that Slack really is where company culture comes from now. And so that's one of the things that they talked about. You know, usually if you're starting at Salesforce, there's all this swag that they give you and your manager takes you out, you get a little tour, they have their Ohana floor, which is the floor at the top of the tower where there's, it's like a beautiful space where people can meditate and all of that stuff. When all of that stuff goes away, you have to try to find ways to replicate that culture. And going back to that idea of Salesforce kind of always using itself as the lab, I think applies to Slack, is that as they're integrating Slack into how they onboard employees, how they do sales calls, all of that stuff, they then take what they're learning and then they're going to keep teaching everybody else what they're learning and then showing their customers how they did it. And so one of the things that that Mark talked about was kind of that ability to go into, he mentioned like Bank of America or Mercedes, or go into different places and talk to CEOs, talk about how to have a new vision for the company. Because really, when they're talking about this digital transformation thing, I mean, they're looking at it as we are fundamentally transforming the economy into a digital first workplace and kind of putting Slack and the different clouds within Salesforce really kind of at the head of that, which is it sounds like really massive and visionary when you think about it that way. I think it's one of the reasons that all three of us got so excited to do this presentation, is because it's not just about they had a great quarter or they bought a company. It's about they are working with their customers, which are, Fortune 100 all the way through so many different companies, to really transform customer experiences. They talked about some of the customers that had good quarters like Crocs or like Sonos. They talked about Miller Knoll, which is a office furniture company, and how they're showing all of those companies how to reconnect with their customers directly. And part of that too is also the idea that direct to consumer is becoming more important. There's less of the middleman. And so that's another component of all of this, which connects to what Clay was talking about earlier and how big Service Cloud is and how big Service Cloud could really get.